the life pod that Arby was going to get in the novel where the raptors pull him away. It was adapted for Roland Timbo. And what happens is the T-Rex is coming towards Roland Timbo. He gets in the life pod, and as he does, the T-Rex actually bites onto the cage. And the way they write it is that you're looking from Roland's point of view, like out from the bars, and all you see is teeth. Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I'm going to be joined by a very special guest. This guy runs the biggest Jurassic Park fan account from South Korea, and he's become a very valuable source of information to fans everywhere who love this franchise. So go ahead, man, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Luis-Solorio. I hope you are doing well. I run a Jurassic Park blog called InGen in South Korea. I'm so excited now. I can't wait to start it.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty fun. One of the things that I really started to notice you from was you were talking about the Super Raptor, which was over a year ago, but nobody had ever talked about that before, and you found it in like a Steven Spielberg book from 2000, which was this alien monster creature that Steven Spielberg cut from The Lost World. And I started talking about that after you like mentioned it to me, and I was like, this is so cool. Fans don't know about this anywhere. What did you think about that Super Raptor when you first saw it?
Well, actually, I saw the name Super Raptor in the Jurassic Park wiki.
Oh, you did?
Everybody didn't know about this. So what is this Super Raptor thing? So I Googling, so I found the book, so I share it. Then everybody said, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was news to me.
Even the wiki said, wow, we didn't know that. Oh, Klayton said that. So now we have the confirmation of the Super Raptor. We need to write about that. So what is going on?
You know what was really cool about that too is that was definitely that's what led to the Indoraptor, I think, right? I mean, that's fair to say.
Or Trespassers Alpha Raptor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure, because that was made around the same time. You know, they have that big Alpha Velociraptor on top of Mount Watson at the end of Trespasser. I mean, you can totally see how all of this stuff connects. And speaking of The Lost World, today we wanted to talk about a lot of information on that second film that is actually not very well known to the general public. This involves a lot of materials that you can find specifically at the Facebook page and YouTube channel called Jurassic Time, which I recently did another video on before in the past with the general outline that was made for the second Jurassic movie, which was done way before any of the cameras started rolling. Now, in this video, Louis and I are going to be talking about what happened in between that outline and the actual final film. This includes planned dinosaurs, deleted story beats, characters, concepts, as well as some older scripts, and there's all kinds of stuff really that was radically different from what you may know of about The Lost World, but we're all going to have some fun talking about it, and that's the whole point of this video. I want to get this information out to as many fans as I possibly can because I love The Lost World, and I know you do too, man. It's like one of your favorite Jurassic Park movies as well, right?
I can't wait to start it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So, dinosaurs. Now, everybody knows about some of the dinosaurs that were in the actual movie, like the male velociraptors, the baby T-Rex, Mamenchisaurus, Stegosaurus. There's also the reptiles like Pteranodon, but there was some stuff that was cut, and one of the big ones that got deleted from the movie was Seismosaurus, which I don't think a lot of people know about, but they switched that out for Mamenchisaurus, I believe. When it comes to the Seismosaurus and some of the scenes that they had featured on, what do you think about this dinosaur, Louis? Do you think it would have been a good addition to the franchise, or was it better that they went with what they did in the final film?
I think they just changed the name because recently Stan Winston's crew released the headquarters of Mamenchisaurus, right?
Yes, they did, yeah.
It resembles very much to the Seismosaurus. So I guess they just changed the name, Seismosaurus to Mamenchisaurus.
I think they did, because all of the actual scenes in the early scripts, they could be easily swapped out for the Mamenchisaurus, and there is some concept art of the Mamenchisaurus in different positions that, I mean, this was one of those sauropods that you could easily swap out, so it's interesting that they went with what they did in the final movie. But there's another dinosaur that you and I were talking a lot about, and that was the camouflage Allosaurus rumors, which were all over the place. And there's actually
Awesome. That is awesome.
what was that? Is it Japanese? The model kit that says Tyrannosaurus Rex, but it has like a gray, almost like Indominus camo looking Allosaurus. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yes, you show us that in your Instagram.
Yeah, very recently. Do you think that this animal was ever, like, concept art was ever made for it, or was this just a rumor once they decided that they were going to go with a camouflaging dinosaur like the Carno? A lot of people talked about it for a while.
Maybe they had a concept art of Allosaurus, but not a grayish coloration, because if the Lost World game has a brown coloration of Allosaurus, maybe that's what they had in mind.
A lot of that stuff for the Lost World game that you actually brought up, that was stuff that was deleted from the movie, and obviously other stuff. Carnotaurus was in the Lost World PlayStation game, and interestingly, Giganotosaurus, which we now know is confirmed for Jurassic World Dominion. So that's pretty interesting. And another animal that was in some concept art and was in a few story pages that David Koepp and Spielberg were going over was the Rhamphorhynchus. And this one's kind of weird because we have the Dimorphodon in the PlayStation game, which can kind of be similar to a Rhamphorhynchus, but ultimately they didn't go with anything like that in the final movie. But they did have a lot of different animals planned for Isla Sorna, and I don't know, there was so much stuff going on. And you mentioned the Lost World video game. There also was the Leptoceratops as one of those dinosaurs, right?
Yep. And the PlayStation game and officer guidebook has a Leptoceratops or Microceratops logo on that book.
Yeah, there is a Microceratops logo on the making of the Lost World book. Now, what's interesting about that is I think that they just took the logo from something else that isn't related to Jurassic Park, but Microceratops or Microceratus as we know it today was in Jurassic Park, the book by Michael Crichton.
Yes.
And we also obviously know it's in Jurassic World, the actual theme park as well. So it's interesting how all of these things kind of correspond with one another. And speaking of which, Ankylosaurus, that was a dinosaur in an early Lost World script that was said to have gone back into extinction, right?
Yes. Interestingly, I recently found a picture of Ankylosaurus that used for promotion of the Lost World.
I saw that, and it's very different than the JP3 version or the Jurassic World version. Yeah. Do you think that was a dinosaur picture that they commissioned somebody to draw that could have been done behind the scenes for the actual movie, or do you think that was just, for like merchandising?
I don't think they drew their own design of Ankylosaurus, not Corythosaurus, because Corythosaurus, Maiasaura, and Hadrosaurus, they drew their own, but I never heard about the Ankylosaurus case, so
I haven't either.
I think they just used another material from other source to movie.
They could have done that, and you mentioned Hadrosaurus and Maiasaurus and in the script it's Corythosaurus, but it's really Corythosaurus, and so that's an important dinosaur. Now you can actually see the Corythosaurus in the final version of the Lost World, where one of the InGen hunters actually has it on the list that he's carrying. Okay, so this is kind of important. That dinosaur, the Corythosaurus, in the movie, Roland Timbo goes, "Dieter, there's one going up ahead, a Carna," and Dieter Stark is like, say that again, Roland, to what? And they're going after the Parasaurolophus, but Roland Timbo is trying to pronounce Corythosaurus. Yes. So this is kind of important. So early on in the Lost World's development, the Corythosaurus was actually going to be the first dinosaur that we see on screen, and it was going to be dead. And I'm sure some of you guys will have heard before in the past about the opening with the fishing net, where they were going to pull a dinosaur. A lot of people for a long time thought it was going to be a dead Parasaurolophus because Stan Winston made that Parasaurolophus for the movie, but originally it was supposed to be a Corythosaurus. And the reason this is so interesting is because, so when they find the body of the Corythosaurus, immediately Peter Ludlow learns this, and he goes into this board meeting to talk with all the other members of InGen. And, they flash a whole bunch of dinosaur shapes on the computers that they're around with a photograph of this dead dinosaur that's been unearthed. And an InGen woman that works at the company identifies it by saying the following: Corinthosaurus version 3.09. 9 units generated from March to October of 1989, and 4 reached maturity. That's big already, so that tells us that in this early version of the movie, there was Corinthosaurs on the island, at least 4 of them, and this was version 3.09, which is a big deal because way before Jurassic World, they're talking about different versions of the dinosaurs now, and there's a lot of stuff to unpack here, but this would have been a really cool opening. I mean, what do you think about it, man?
I'm very interested, and Rouleau said after that, wow, we didn't know about the Site B and haven't hide us. We need to find this place and we need to capture the asset. That scene was so cool, and Corintosaurus roar is bigger than our minds. Well, I'm very pleased.
Yeah, it's a much bigger role. It's a big surprise, and I had talked about this with Jack actually for a while about how I had heard rumors of, Peter Ludlow looking for Site B because it was a secret, and I always thought that was kind of silly. I was like, how do you keep an island a secret? But when you read the script, it makes a lot of sense, and everyone at InGen is surprised. They're like, wow, it's 625 miles south to southwest of Costa Rica, and they're looking on a map and they're trying to figure out where it is, and Peter Ludlow says, wow, John Hammond was smart. This is far enough away that no one would find it, but close enough that he could transport them in a day. And there had been rumors of a Site B in the company for a while, but nobody believed it because it was just such a crazy idea that John Hammond had a whole other dinosaur island where he bred all the dinosaurs before shipping them to Nublar. But in the script they go over that Hammond kept everything quiet by paying all of the construction workers in cash, so there was no trail back that they could trace to computers, and it was very interesting. This is a very fun version of events that we never really got to see, and the fact that Peter Ludlow had to do some detective work after finding this dinosaur carcass was pretty cool, man. I really like this script. I didn't expect to, but I was reading through it and I was like, this is so different. This would have changed like everything.
Because it feels like mystery, like a King Kong or kind of adventure movies.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. It does kind of feel like Peter Jackson's King Kong from 2005, where you don't really know what's out there, and you hear the rumors of something has survived, and eventually you find out that it is true, because in the actual movie, they just start with the little girl getting attacked by the compies. And I mean, we all know, there's more dinosaurs out there, but, this was very different. So, and another thing about this one is they kind of roll with the idea that Isla Nublar is probably destroyed, which,
yes.
That's not true for the new movies, but back then, this was something that they were going to go with.
Operation Clean Sweep.
Yes, Operation Clean Sweep, which is pretty cool lore in and of itself, but some of the other stuff that's really cool about this version of The Lost World is that, remember I was talking about that character called Jetson, who later became Jutson. So he started off as a Biosyn, mercenary, but later on down the line he became a good guy. In fact, he became a paleontologist for the Gatherers. Do you like Jutson? Because there's not much to him, but I think he plays a cool role in what they turned him into, at least in this script. But obviously, nobody ever got to see it, so it's hard to judge. But what are your thoughts on Dr. Jutson in the Lost World script?
My opinion, I think could be a very awesome character, but I don't think it's especially need that character in the final film.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg.
Very minor role.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg actually mentioned that when they were trying to get rid of characters, he said, well, you have to leave me somebody to eat. And that's what they were going to do with him, is he was just going to get eaten by raptors in the worker village later on. He's like a paleontologist. He's a cool guy. It's just, he was clearly a character made to get eaten by some of the dinosaurs, which I thought that was pretty funny. But
thankful Velociraptor.
Yeah, yes. And speaking of Dr. Jutson and his change and everything like that, there was another change that I think was very good, and this involves how the T-Rex actually finds the hunter camp. So originally, in the final movie, we see that the T-Rex is able to smell the blood from its baby on Sarah's jacket. Well, in one of the early scripts, Dr. Burke, who was the opposite of Dr. Jetson. He actually finds a dinosaur egg and he decides to cook it at night, which...
What?
Yes, it's very silly. He's cooking the dinosaur egg, right? And Roland Timbo is like, "What are you doing? That's crazy. They're gonna smell." And of course, that's what leads the T-Rex to like come attack them. But
oh my god,
that's so dumb, isn't it? That's
even he's a paleontologist. He know about the dinosaurs.
I know. Right? Everybody complains about Sarah knowing better from her shirt, but this guy's cooking a dinosaur egg like on the island. It's so silly.
Wow.
Yeah, it would have been. I'm glad they went with the blood on the shirt after reading through that, because that's as weird and dumb as that is. I was telling you about this before we started recording, but there's another version of the script where the gatherers were also capturing dinosaurs. It wasn't just the hunters. And
Yes.
They had in their tent a whole bunch of compies. And, the compies started to, chirp really suddenly and freak out. And Sarah explained this to Kelly, that they only do this when they're spooked. And what ended up happening was, the T-Rex eventually sticks its head through the tent, and there's this great scene where they talk about all of the compies suddenly shut up because they're like, oh, there's a predator. They just get very quiet. And the way that Sarah gets them all out of this situation is she slowly opens the cages of all the compies, and then the compies start to like race out and scramble all around the ground and cower underneath, and the T-Rex then like is looking at all these compies scurry out from the tent, and it picks its head up, and when it does, it rips the tent out of the ground. That's where the whole attack starts. But that would have been such a cool little moment to see I love seeing dinosaur behavior in these movies, and to see the compies instinctively get very quiet. Like normal animals do when they know that there's a predator around. They get quiet and they hunker down and they try not to draw any attention to them. But I really wish we could have seen that in the movie, because I just like compies in general, by the way. I love the little dinosaurs that don't get a lot of love, so seeing that would have been pretty fun.
But we actually saw them in the recently franchised new films animated series, Camp Cretaceous.
Yes, we did, and they're all over the place in that. They kind of took over the island, didn't they? Because at the very beginning of Camp Cretaceous, they have the scene where they get out of the car and they're like, there's something out here. And then they catch the compy and put him in the cage. I guess that implies that the compies they're hard to control because they're so small and they get all over the place.
Simon Masrani said in the Evolution of Claire that everywhere in the compy, so you better watch out.
Yeah, poor kid going to Jurassic World and just gets swarmed by compies when he's trying to pet a baby dinosaur. It's a bad day.
Grateful that compy doesn't have a toxic like Proconsognathus in the novel.
Yeah, well, that's true too. If they had the poison bite, then they'd be a way bigger problem. Another thing that I'll go into further in a different video. For all of you at home that have a Lost World Jurassic Park Bull T-Rex toy, you know that toy came with an action figure inside of a cage, right? And the idea was that the T-Rex would eat the cage and you could get the cage out of the T-Rex's stomach. Well, that's based on an early scene that was cut from the movie where the life pod that Arby was going to get in the novel, where the raptors pull him away, it was adapted for Roland Timbo. And what happens is the T-Rex is coming towards Roland Timbo, he gets in the life pod, and as he does, the T-Rex actually bites onto the cage. And the way they write it is that you're looking from Roland's point of view, like out from the bars, and all you see is teeth, and it throws him like all over the place. It's scary. It's a very cool scene. It's a very Lost World scene where you could just imagine this character stuck in a little position where they could die, but they eventually get away after the T-Rex throws the cage on the ground and goes after the hunters when they're running through the valley. It's pretty intense, and I told you that, and I was like, that sounds like an awesome scene.
I mean, imagine now, but that is so awesome. So I don't understand why they cut it off. That would be so amazing, and people would love that.
Well, it's scary, it's cool, and it got as far as to having, an actual toy made out of it. So I wonder, I don't know why they cut that from the film unless that was a really late cut, because if they have a toy made from it, you know,
Yes.
oop, there's my dogs. But if they have a toy made from it, you know, obviously it's got to be they had to have been pretty far into production. So there's a lot of other parts of these scripts that I think a lot of people know about, like the Pteranodon ending and all of that stuff where they didn't go to Santiago. But there's just so many differences made to this movie. One of the other things is Sarah Harding actually going to the island with Nick Van Owen and Ian Malcolm instead of them actually going there to rescue her. And that was a big thing where Kathleen Kennedy felt like, you know, they needed to go get Sarah, or she needed to already be on the island, and Steven Spielberg and David Koepp really did not want to do that, but they ended up doing it in the final film. There's just so many different versions of the scripts that they made. It's kind of hard to imagine a different version of the movie that we know, but there were several different versions, and they're all cool. I enjoy all of these very different sort of looks at the film. And by the way, in all of the material that we've gone over, we still can't find any script that has the Super Raptor. So
Yes.
we don't even know what that was. Like, me and Lewis were talking about it could possibly be like an Alpha Raptor in the worker village, but do you think that would have made sense? Because the way Spielberg described it is like it's an alien-esque monster, like a genetic freak. So I don't really know what they were planning with that thing.
Maybe I think it just introduced that as a genetically modified Velociraptor, bigger, smaller, crueler.
Do you think that it would have been the only one? Like, they only made... Oh, you know what? They were talking about different versions of dinosaurs with the Corinthosaurus at the beginning of the movie, so maybe this was like a different version of a raptor. Like...
Yes.
You know, like a test one. It also plays into the idea of Jurassic Park 3, where we see the very different looking velociraptors compared to the second and first movie. They've got the quills on their heads, they've got the more bird-like pupils and the different colorations to them. There's a lot of stuff in these early Jurassic Park scripts that's quite fascinating. I mean, in the final film, we see that big ribcage with the Apatosaurus bones, where it turns into the pipes of the worker village. So Apatosaurus is another dinosaur that they were planning on having on the island, and there's so much stuff here, man. I know you really like the Hadrosaur and Maiasaur pages that were made for the InGen list, which sadly, do they show up in the final film or no? I know the Corythosaurus does.
Show them. Actually, we can see the Hadrosaurus, half of the Hadrosaurus body in the film, and very briefly the Maiasaur body too.
Is this?
I found them.
Is this the same scene with the Pachycephalosaurus where it headbutts Carter? It is? Okay. Well, okay. You're gonna have to send me some pictures of that so I can put it in the edit. But that's pretty cool. I don't think I've ever seen those before.
So I just think they're a prototype or early version of the dinosaurs.
Well, speaking of those dinosaurs, do you think that there are even more that we don't know about? I mean, they talked about the camouflaging animals in one of the early outlines. We don't know if they ever storyboarded that or if they ever did concept art for it, but the PlayStation game did, and so did the arcade game. So I mean, there could very well be a lot. I wouldn't be shocked if they did concept art for the Super Raptor, honestly.
I think Dinosaurus was one of them.
Dinosuchus is another thing. Well, in the game, is it Parasuchus instead of Barasuchus? The one that goes after the Compy?
Yes.
And see, you know what else is really cool about that game? And I know you might be thinking out there if you're watching this video, what does the game have to do with the movie? Well, a lot. Because in that video game, they also have the lasers. The laser fences that the hunters were going to use in the script to keep dinosaurs from attacking them. That's in the video game. They were making all of this stuff in tandem with each other while the second movie was coming out, which is one of the reasons why I think the arcade game and the PlayStation game and the Sega Genesis game are all radically different, is because there was a lot of different versions of the script. I think my Sega Genesis version of The Lost World actually says that Biosyn are the bad guys, which was in that early outline. So they must have sent out... Oh, and obviously, everybody remembers their toys and stuff that had the DX logo on everything, which I've never found DX in any of these scripts, so that's itself is pretty interesting.
Speaking of DX, one of my book, Jurassic Park 3, is not just the Lost World, but Jurassic Park 3 Encyclopedia has a DX logo too.
Is this in the junior novelization, or is this in something else that you have?
It's only available in Korea. It's called Jurassic Park's Dinosaur Encyclopedia.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Because you showed pictures of it before, right?
Yes, it said the Spinosaurus in Jurassic Park 3 is female.
Right, so even at that time, they still had assets for DX. And remember, there actually was talk of a script for Jurassic Park 3 where the dinosaurs were going to have that disease that would pass on to humans, which...
Extinction.
That sounds so cool, by the way. I would love to see... All of these ideas sound so cool to me, though. So, what you guys can basically take out of this video is Seismosaurus, Rhamphorhynchus, Hadrosaurus, Maiasaurus, all kinds of dinosaurs that were either a part of the production or cut and swapped out with other animals. There's also talk of the extinct Ankylosaurus. There's the entire Roland Timbo in the life pod scene, the scene where the compies were in the tent. There's a ton of stuff. Oh, in the beginning, the Corythosaurus that they found dead in the net that most people think was the Parasaurolophus. I mean, there's so much to the Lost World that people don't even seem to know about. And then you, Lewis, you come with your Super Raptor stuff for everybody to see, and we're like...
here is Super Raptor.
Yeah. So this movie could have been like totally different. I love The Lost World. I mean, I think it's definitely my favorite out of all of these Jurassic Park movies. I think the first movie is the best, but in terms of what I like and enjoy the most about these films, you know, who Roland Timbo is, the design of the T-Rex that's a male, and, you know, the dark sight beast. We talked about this where we both like the darkness of Fallen Kingdom a lot, too.
Yes.
I love this stuff. I love going over all of these old Lost World scripts. There's the Attack on the High Hide as well, which I'm not sure. Did you ever see that? Where the original Attack on the High Hide was with Malcolm, Nick Van Owen, Peter Ludlow, and Dr. Judson almost getting killed by the T-Rex, where...
Only saw as a storyboard.
Yeah, the storyboard is part of what it's based on. But basically, Malcolm is like running behind because he's got like... I think he still has a hurt leg from the first Jurassic Park. And, you know, he's running and he barely makes it, but I think Nick Van Owen or somebody grabs them both in, and the T-Rex grabs on to the high hide, which you see in the storyboard. They almost get eaten, but it's pretty cool scene in and of itself. That's also taking part in the whole Roland Timbo in the life pod scene that was also there. But, yeah, man, Lost World Jurassic Park, it's just one of those movies that not a lot of people know too much about its production in terms of all this stuff that we're going over, which is straight from Jurassic Time, but as fans, I love talking about it.
I have a memory about the Lost World. It's not about story, but I can't find the VHS tape when I was young, so that's why I love Lost World, because, man, it's very hard to find it.
Yeah, you were telling me that one was the most difficult one to locate, right?
Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
I can easily find the Jurassic Park and Jurassic Park 3, but everywhere they don't have the Lost World. So where I can find, I only saw 1 and 3, but where it is 2, I love them.
That had to be so interesting because you watched them out of order then. So the Lost World was the last one that you saw in the original 3. Wow. Well, okay, so do you remember the first time you saw that movie?
Yes, I remember.
What did you think about the ending with the T-Rex in San Diego?
I was shocked. I really was shocked because I've never seen the dinosaur on the city. I never saw the King Kong or Godzilla at that moment, so
yeah.
I was shocked. Wow, is that possible dinosaur in the modern days? They're in the civilization? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool to see, and it's interesting that you watched Jurassic Park 3 before that one, because in Jurassic Park 3, they don't really have dinosaurs in cities or anything like that. So to have that big moment at the end of the second movie, for that to be something that you see after 3. That's got to be pretty cool. Just think, we're going to get a whole new movie where there's dinosaurs all over the modern world. And all the other characters are coming back. Dr. Grant, Dr. Sattler, Dr. Malcolm, Dr. Wu, Dodson. This is going to be so cool.
Absolutely cool.
Yeah. But yeah, Lewis, it's been really cool having you come on and talk about this because you look for stuff just as hard as I do, and when you find it, and it's just cool to talk about it with other fans. Speaking of which, being the biggest Jurassic Park fan in South Korea, Lewis has done a lot of work in trying to get this information to other fans that don't really know enough or have access to some of this stuff. So I want to give the floor to him real quick and talk about his blog and encyclopedia stuff that he does. So go ahead, man, talk about that.
I wrote about naval blog called InGen since 2010. So if you're Korean, can I say Korean now?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
한국인이시라면 제 블로그 인젠에서 절 찾으실 수 있고요. And if you're not Korean, you can find me Twitter or Instagram at Jurassic Korea.
Yeah, and he's a really good source, by the way, too, because again, I keep bringing up that Super Raptor thing. You've introduced a lot of other stuff to me, but the Super Raptor was the coolest thing that I think nobody in the fandom really had any clue about. Kind of like the Grebnadu from the Jurassic Park Halloween Horror Nights, and when I saw that Super Raptor, I was like, "That's awesome." People are gonna
see and sight J, you don't forget it.
Yeah. Anyways, guys. Thanks for joining us. You can find Lewis at Jurassic Korea, like you said. And don't forget, all the information that we went over today is straight from the Facebook page and YouTube channel called Jurassic Time. Anyways, guys, it's been fun. Thanks for joining me, Lewis.
My pleasure.
Now, before I go, I'd like to thank all of my game wardens, as well as all of my InGen executives. I'd also like to thank all of my park workers and InGen hunters as well. Guys, it seriously means the world to me that you all continue to support what I do, and I never want you to ever forget that. Now, I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video, and hope you all enjoyed the content. If you feel like I deserve it, I'd appreciate the like and hope that you'll consider subscribing if you're interested in hearing from me again. I'll see you all in the next video, guys, and as always, take it easy.